that sense that without those disclosures, that people will try and just go, well, the agent said.
Going once, going twice, sold. You're listening to the Property Pod.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Property Pod, your weekly engagement into real estate here in the Hobart Marketplace. I'm your host, Aaron Horn, and if you were in the room before we started recording, you would have found out that John's reading all the Harry Potter books again, and Pat's been playing video games. Yeah. Welcome to the studio, boys.
Yeah. Taking over the world. They're so good.
When we said, John, what have you been up to? I haven't seen you for a little bit. He's like, you're not going to believe it, boys. I've been reading Harry Potter.
He's been under the staircase and he's just been reading the books.
Yeah, it's
I
great.
was like, if someone had paid me, I wouldn't have guessed that that's what you've been doing.
Well, and then because I'm jumping between the book and then the audio bit as well, so then I'll listen to a chapter when I'm driving around, and then when I'm back at home, I'll pick up the my little Kindle.
Oh man, you're
quick
binging
question,
the crap out of it.
Are you reading the same chapter that you just listened to, or you're like reading chapter 1, listening to chapter 2, reading chapter 3?
That's how it's going, yeah.
So
And
it's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference? Like, do you like Stephen Fry in your ear telling you all about it?
He's actually a great narrator, like, because he does because he does emphasise the voices and acts them out, so it's rather engaging. But I do enjoy reading it because I watched the movies first. I've got all the references for their faces and their voices, so when I read the book, I see the actors acting through the book.
Yeah, but when you're doing the descriptive bits, do you read it in Stephen Fry's voice?
It's sort of blending between the two at this point.
So follow-on question then, how do you feel about the new remake that HBO are doing of Harry Potter where they're going to be different characters playing?
Well, I don't know.
Playing the characters.
I'll wait with bated breath, I suppose. But with that, though, are they going to be... Is it going to be a series where they can expand through the
TV
books?
show.
Each book is going to be a series.
Okay.
So then they're going to, have 7 series over each book. So it'll be interesting to see how they go.
I was just going to say, at least she's finished the series, unlike, what's his name? It's just
George R.
George,
R.
who just refuses to go back to work on that series. I'm just so busy, but no one cares about anything else that he does. Obviously, he's just super rich now, so it doesn't really matter, but he'll never finish those books.
Well, I think the ending of the show wasn't too happy. No one was too pleased with that anyway, so no matter what he did, would be better than what they came out with, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so at least with the Harry Potter ones, they've got all the source materials there, so they won't end up in the same fate.
All right, so that's the interesting bit that we were talking about off camera, but now that we're on camera and we're still talking about it,
Stretch.
Tell us what you were doing last week or the week before when you weren't here, because we heard you've been media trained.
Oh, yeah.
And you've come in with a rip-roaring story to start us off. So tell us more.
Well, because what the REIT's done with our new CEO is the local news reporters have never had a one point of contact on who to call about commentary for real estate. So
who are you going to call?
That's right. So what she wanted to do, which makes sense, is that there's a representative. If you've got a story up in the northwest, that's your representative. If you've got you need someone down south, here's the person you speak with for the REIT channel on top of the CEO. So what they did for us as board members is they put us through some media training to help actually be better when we're asked those questions and what to do. Because a few years back when during COVID, and there was a lot of stuff going on from everywhere. Adrian Kelly, our president, he was representing the REIA at the time, did a phenomenal job, but the pressure that the media was putting him under was just immense.
Yeah, sure.
So what they wanted to do in the case where, if the REIT and the REIA do have a message that they're putting out, they want to ensure that we're capable of being able to represent that well. But as a side note, it was very handy because not 3 days later, I got a call from the ABC just asking about it was one of the sales in Hobart for not the private hospital that was being sold, an old one. I can't remember the Queen.
Yeah, so St Mary's is
the
being
St Mary's.
sold.
Yeah. She was just commenting on that, but fortunate enough, that was just a fun, engaging conversation. But it's more so in the situations where you're going to get somebody who's going to try and get you in a gotcha situation. What to do to prepare for that?
So can you hit us with some of those? Are you allowed to bestow some of the secrets?
You can probably look up Google ways to prepare for media, but one of the things is that to
deny everything.
Yes. never had. I'm busy. Well, just be mindful that you don't have to sit there and engage straight away. Just be, look, I'm really sorry. I'm not in a position to be able to take a call right this second. Can we book a time for X 3 o'clock.
Yeah, so I know your old man has talked a few times about whenever he was in the REIT as the president and they were kind of coming at him with questions, he would say, come back to me with the questions,
Yep.
I'll look over them, and
Yep.
then I will respond in due time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that kind of what they were running
That's
you
one
through?
of them. If you can, if you can, it's almost like just buying time to help do some research.
Yep.
And it's like and if you want to flick me an email with what you're wanting to cover, so I've got the information you need available. And if they're genuine, they're going to. But if they're ones they're going to try and just bully you into a corner, just don't engage.
Yep.
Because there is nothing good that can come out of that anyway. Like they are actively trying to attack you. And they'll also say, well, I need the story now from a deadline at 4 o'clock. It's like, okay, I can appreciate that. Well, I'm available at 2 o'clock. Can we talk about then?
Yep.
Just like you would in your life. Like if someone runs up to you on the street and then starts going, like what would you do? You'd be like, hey, look, I'm sorry. I've got to go. So that's one of the ways. The other one too was to actually just slow down, breathe. Because one of the things that are going to come up with your nerves, and I mean, you both know me bloody well. Like if I'm a little bit excited, I'm going to talk really fast.
Yeah.
And, blabber more than I need to just because my head will go somewhere. So it's about take a breath, slow down before you actually start the phone call even, when you know it's going to happen. Take a couple of big, deep breaths as if you're getting ready to go on stage.
That's actually really
calm
interesting.
yourself.
Yeah, the way you've kind of phrased that is like before taking the phone call, like I'll often hear your phone voice over top of your podcast voice and be like, oh, they're vastly different things. Like
100%,
I've done this phone call 1,000 times. I know what I'm about to do. Whereas we're sitting in here and I'll be throwing this at you and you just be like, and then we're like, what were we saying?
And I know it sounds rehearsed, and maybe you could say to some degree it is, but for me, it actually probably comes more so out of a speaking of confidence.
Oh yeah, no, well, that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Like you've taken the time beforehand to think about like, oh, this is the message I'm trying to relay in this conversation. And I've had this conversation heaps of times. I've had the conversation of, oh, here's good news for your property, here's bad news for your property, we're in a bit of a tricky spot. You've had that conversation so many times that you know and you have the confidence to relay it confidently.
No, that makes
Whereas
sense.
if you're being asked a question randomly, you're
completely
like, oh,
different.
I've got to process the idea. I've got to come up with an answer straight away. Yeah, no, well played, J-Mac.
Well, and that I guess is an interesting part to it because they did talk about, if all politicians will receive an enormous amount of, media training as well, because just imagine the party's got a message they're trying to relay. They don't want some rogue person just accidentally throwing out something random.
Wrong. Yeah.
And
So this is where I was so excited that you were going because I'm like, you can throw out some rogue stuff.
yeah.
I wanted to know, did everybody do it or did they just send you, John? That's where I was
Yeah, you
curious.
just said,
It's
look,
like,
just like a special child. We're really worried about this one.
so, John, this is an opportunity we've got for you. Well, John's rocked up. Oh, where is everyone?
Lucky enough, I had my mother next to me. No, it was all of us. But I'd read what got me just because I'd read Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography not maybe a week or two before, and in that he was talking about his experiences, going for governor and other bits during his time in California. But he was talking about the media training that he received because obviously he's a very entertaining person. He said the biggest problems is when he just his humour and his charm was a real strength for him, but also too it was a weakness.
Yeah.
Because one of them that really he stuffed up, which for those that love him thought was hilarious, but it completely killed something that he was trying to get through the parliament at the time, where he just called I can't remember what you call them, but he called them economic girly men.
You big economic girly man.
Yeah. It was so then.
So actually, I just have a question I just need to ask. It's sitting on the tip of my tongue. You've been reading/listening to Harry Potter by Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
Did you do the same for the Arnie book?
I had the audio exclusively for that one because it's a monster of a time.
Does Arnie read it?
The first and the last chapter.
Just enough to make you think you're getting him for the whole
I
book.
was shattered because I was so good listening to him.
So John was happy to pay the $80 for that book.
So, but yeah, in that one, because it was a thing where he without that training, he obviously had some degree, but it had to sharpen him up for really hard interviews and preparing his message. Because if there's something he wanted to relay, he had to practice it because the only way and he called it doing the reps. You know, so it's like, okay, this is what we're trying to get through. He had to do it well to sell the message well. Otherwise, if he did just skew off too far, he would lose.
Well, and I guess like we talked about you on the phone, having the conversations about the houses and, good news, bad news. Like you've done the reps on that to be like, I'm confident with this conversation. It might not be a pleasant conversation, but I know how to navigate through that.
I've never thought of it that way, but I guess it's true, huh? Like,
Yeah.
because we are faced with the different people, different houses, but the situations replicate. So
Yeah.
it's like you're in financial, stress or that kind of stuff. So at least when we've seen that scenario, we can help guide our clients well.
Yeah.
And if you just, fluffing it from the start, well, it's every likelihood you're going to stumble a few times, which I've done more times than I care to recount.
But now you've done the reps, it's put you into a place where you're like, oh, I'm practiced at this. So that we've got here, and we're talking about being thrown curveballs that haven't come at you, but hopefully you've done enough reps on this one. We had a listener actually write in with a question, so I'm just going to throw it at you. Didn't tell you it was coming, and I'm just going to see.
It sounds like this whole episode.
Yeah, here we go. Are we repped? Are we prepped?
I'm just going to say, we were talking about the council and stuff on the TikTok episode that Paige was a part of.
Oh, yeah.
And someone wrote in and asked, could we talk to the STCA, which luckily I've done this enough.
Favourite word.
Well, luckily I've done this enough times that I
No, I don't know. Like, just ask the council. Yeah.
So STCA, I worked out, was subject to council approval. They wanted to know, or I assumed they wanted to know, can you tell us about it? So I'm just going to throw it out there.
Sure.
Media trained John, Patrick, hit me with what you got.
Look, I think it's a way for agents to be able to sell a story without any fact checking. I guess is the best way to describe it. Like we would use it in a scenario where maybe there's units that we think can be built in the backyard of a property.
Okay, yep.
So we're making an educated guess based on our knowledge of the planning scheme and our understanding of how that relates to this property.
Sure.
But to cover ourselves, we're basically saying should be able to put 2 units in the backyard of this property, subject to council approval, of course.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
It's a get out of jail free card.
yeah,
Yep.
that's a good way to describe it.
And that's because we've been forced to. And it's that sense that without those disclosures, that people will try and just go, well, the agent said. It's like, well, I said, subject to council approval. We had it once with a brochure on one of our properties we used the house size from the government website. Oh, sorry, the
list
information. Yep. Turns out that wasn't the correct house size. But because on our brochure, which said that had it and it was wrong, the buyer had tried to get back to us and said, well, the agent was advertising and said that this was that. It's definitely not that. So we want to sue them for for blah.
The difference in the value.
The only reason why we got out of it was because there was a disclosure on both sides of the brochure. And they said, well, look, the agent has obviously done everything they can to show you that with the best of their knowledge, they have done the research and these are the points of references.
Yeah, sure.
But at the same time, they said that it cannot be relied exclusively and you must do your own research. So it's just all that stuff always ends up being for those that just want to shirk responsibility and put it back on the agent,
Yeah. So I guess when I was thinking about like the subject to council approval, you've got that as your get out of jail free card. How do you go about getting the council approval? Like as the next step, so it's subject to it.
That's it's hard. So basically, that could be months, if not years worth of work. I'm currently doing it on a property I'm building at the moment.
Of course. Yeah, actually, this is a good example.
I'm 12 months in now and I still don't have my full approvals yet.
Yep.
So, and that's why we can't normally sell that feature as part of a sale.
Yep.
So it's a way of us justifying a sale price to a potential developer or to a potential purchaser. But we can't get the owner to go do that work and have it all approved prior to selling because the property would just take too long to get it done.
To move along, for sure.
So I guess what we're trying to do is justify our sale price by saying, yes, this house is sitting on 800 square metres, therefore theoretically you should be able to put a unit in the backyard. We know that the planning scheme says that we have to have 3.5 metres of space down the side to gain access to the new property at the back.
Okay.
We know that we have to have 6 metres at the front for a passing bay. So there's certain things that we know that we can go out and tangibly measure to make sure that we can tick a certain amount of boxes.
So I know you can't talk generally for every real estate agent, but is that something that is gone through the training of becoming a real estate agent, or does everybody know that, or is it just from experience?
I think our agency knows it because we do work heavily in the development space.
Sure.
Sometimes I do see properties online and it amuses me because I'm like, I don't know if that's subject to council approval is really if that unit's possible or if that idea is possible.
Okay, yeah. So
and
it's
I'll
not
play around and run my fact checks, and I don't think it passes the bar.
But again, that's kind of like by doing the reps of having it done a few times, It's, and again, I'm just making this up as I go. Is that plan build Tasmania? Is that something that can help with?
It would help give you an idea of zoning. It helps give you an idea of easements or pipes and things that may prevent you from doing certain projects. So it definitely could help you. You'll see with some of our agencies, Aaron Murray's got one at the moment. We've gone as far as getting what we call a preliminary plan drawn, which is basically engaging a draftsman to look at the site and say, right, this is 3,000 square meters.
This is actually really good. So this is, those plans, or what the draftsman's done is theoretically this will fit. They're not approved plans. They're nothing that will...
Just a concept.
It's just a concept. It's a concept to show to a developer or to a purchaser that, we're not making this stuff up. We've actually done some initial research. But of course...
And that draftsman would have that knowledge as well about all those specific planning rules.
Yeah.
Well,
that area.
And I think in that specific example, on the very last house, there's a red line which indicates that this is actually, you'd have to apply for a relaxation because we've overstepped the basics.
Okay.
Yeah. So even in that, it's an educated concept, not just plonking houses.
So for us, for that particular project, we wanted to make sure that we were able to sell a developer on how many they could fit on the property.
Sure.
So we knew that we could fit a few. It was just a debate on whether it was 6 properties that could fit or 8 properties that could fit.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we decided to go the extra step to try and get a little bit more clarity around what was possible so that we could sell that story better to a purchaser with a bit of confidence around it too.
Yeah.
I don't know of a lot of agencies that go to that sort of level, but we still have to have that subject to council approval disclosure in there, because if we sell the idea of 8 and it turns out the council only lets you have 7 done there, well, we need to make sure a purchaser is fully aware that, it was to the best of our knowledge and our understanding that this potentially is possible.
Yeah, but that would change your sums massively if you were thinking if I can get the 8 on there, I can rent them out or build them at this cost. So it changes a bunch of the
And the other thing that we can't control as well, and people need to remember as well, is 8 might fit today. But if you don't start the project for 3 years and then you go to do 8, then maybe there's been a planning scheme change in that period of time.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they've got bigger, private open space requirements, or they've got different things that have changed in the planning scheme that we are working off.
So I'm thinking you've built you bought a block of land in like the 1970s based on it said we could fit this many things on here.
Yeah. You go to do it today.
Under the rules of the 70s building code.
You go to do it today and you can do half.
Yeah, okay.
So we can't be held responsible for that later down the track.
Yeah, sure.
So that's why we use subject to council approval, I guess, when we are talking about opportunities on properties.
Yeah, cool.
I feel our agency, we do go that extra step and try to, when we utilise it, it's because we've done a bit of background information first.
Yeah.
I would like to think all agencies do that.
Oh, look, you can't speak for all agencies, but I guess, I just wondered whether that was something that comes in the training of if you're selling property.
Sometimes it feels like it's just a get out of jail free card that some agents will use, but that's just my opinion on it.
Nah, cool.
Yeah. Look, from the training perspective, we're all as part of our licensing are shown, what is conscionable marketing, and it's just in the end becomes down to the ethic of the individual that some will just promise things that they outright can't deliver upon.
Yep.
Others will disclose once given that information, but then it just comes down to very much individual.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. That's interesting.
Does that answer your question?
I don't know if it answers our listeners' question, but it was an interesting one that they threw out there. And
I think what any listener that sees STAC, and most of the times it's just the letters, not the full subject to council approval, that is a red flag for you to go and talk to the council about what's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And
can you say that again?
So if you're reading the text and it has
just
in brackets STAC, subject to council approval.
Other way around.
Yeah.
If it's just got the letters, then to me that's a red flag for you to at least go and have a conversation with the local council and just check a few extra things.
Are you saying? Okay, sorry, but are you saying if the letters are there, check, but if they've written out the whole thing?
No, either or.
Okay,
but
I just thought you were saying
no, most agents don't write it out in full, and so people just read 4 letters. They don't know what it means, so they move on, and they just become. And then agents able to turn around and say, "Well, I did have subject to council approval written in there."
Yeah, gotcha.
Well, you didn't. You had 4 letters in a bracket.
No, I just thought the way that you worded it, you were saying if they haven't gone to the effort to write out all the 4 words,
no,
then
it might be helpful just because when I bought my house and wanting to do a unit at the back, I didn't really know what I was doing. So, we haven't proceeded with the building. But if the question then becomes, well, what if I'm looking to do something to get approved by council, what do I do?
Yes.
So very simply, like the people that you're going to need in your corner is a surveyor to survey the block to ensure.
He hasn't brought the corner up for
I
so
know.
long.
Yeah. So it's like
Feels good to have the corner
Oh,
back.
it does, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So you got your surveyor. They're going to do the survey of the land to then understand the what's there.
Yep.
Easements, gradients, you name it. You'll need a draftsman or a person to design the house for you based on the plans from that survey. And then on that case, depending on how far you go, your builders, your engineers, your everyone else. But the way where you'd start is with a surveyor,
Okay, cool. That's good to know.
and then from the surveyor you build from there.
Awesome. I love it. Perfect. I think that answers the question, answered it for me. I got a bit of understanding, so totally appreciate that. We'll find out if user 4728596 or whatever they were on TikTok
Love them.
is happy with that.
That's my favourite user.
They post some really good content.
yeah.
All right. That's the pod for today. Thanks for coming in. It's nice to have media trained Mac, who feels just like the Mac that we've had all this time. I think he's been media trained anyway. He's been doing reps of yarning and telling stories for years.
Yeah, trials by fire.
Good to have you back. Good to be back. We'll be back next week with even more podcast. See ya, bye. You have been listening to The Property Pod, recorded and edited by 414 Media House in conjunction with 414 Property Code.
This podcast is general information only, and the thoughts and views expressed is the opinion of our panel, and listeners should always seek then use their own investigation into any topic we discuss to ensure they fully understand their own situation.
It does not constitute and should not be relied on as purchasing, selling, financial or investment advice or recommendations, express or implied, and it should not be used as an invitation to take up any agent or investment services. No investment decision or activity should be undertaken on the basis of this information without first seeking qualified and professional advice.